All right. Good afternoon, everybody. It's 5 o'clock. I want to welcome everybody to our board budget workshop. So I'm calling order. I will, I guess, go into floor a motion for approval of the proposed agenda, please.
I move to approve the proposed agenda.
Discussion. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed say no. All right. Yay. And if we may have our clerk please do roll call for board members.
Yes. Mrs. Burns? Here. Mrs. Cooper? Here. Ms. Dooley? Here. Mr. Morris?
Here.
Mr. Meyer?
Here.
Mrs. Richardson? Here. Ms. Torres?
Yes. Thank you much. All right, and I'm gonna hand it over. This is an opportunity to kind of take a look and dig into our budget document. So that thank you.
All right, good afternoon. Hope everyone can hear me okay. And so just want to welcome everybody here and those who are joining us this afternoon from the community and media. We are going to go through our, we're going to meticulously guide you this afternoon through our budget development session. What I would encourage you all, this is a work session, so this do not hold your questions to the end. As we go through the presentation, if you have questions, feel free to ask those questions because there are some things that are changing that look a lot different this school year. Those assembled on this side, we are, this is going to be a tag team, so we've assigned some slides as we go through. And again, just feel free to ask those questions as we go along. Next, I don't know if slides are being shared or what the case is. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next slide. So if you can recall earlier in this school year, we did go through the exercise of identifying the budget priorities. So in the green down at the bottom, what you'll see identified are those priorities for the 24-25 budget cycle. Additionally, what you see above that are our strategic plan goals. And so what we have done is we have categorized those priorities in relation to the strategic plan. We've done a lot of work, a lot of good work with the strategic plan. And so we want to make sure that everything that we are doing, that there's a strong correlation. So you'll see those requests, and these are needs-based requests as we're building a needs-based budget. And they correlate directly to the strategic plan. And so that's presented there. The next slide. I just want to remind people, I know we have new board members, but for the second year, we have received the Meritorious Budget Award for our budget. And so just wanted to highlight the good work that has happened with our school finance team. And I'm going to turn it over to the next is Kim Powell.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk with you all about demographics and enrollment, which both are significant drivers in our budget requests. Go ahead, next slide. So in the table there on the top left is showing the projected enrollment increases for regular education. And for this purpose, regular refers to the projection of students that have less than 50% special services. So 0 up to or just under 50% special services, because once you get above 50% or more, then you're getting not into just traditional classroom teacher resources, but there are other staff that are requested based on those needs. So that's what regular means. We're not going to the next slide yet, just to let you know more detail on the next slide. But to summarize, most of our K-4 grades in every elementary school have 3 classes. That's our norm. There are a few exceptions where you'll have small cohorts go through and you'll see some grade levels that have 2 classrooms or classroom teachers. And then on the other side of that, Occasionally we'll have a bubble of a larger cohort, and those within the grade level will require 4 classroom teachers. Now, both Venable and Burley Moran have two small class cohorts that are leaving, the 4th grade cohorts that are small and they're moving out this year. So fundamentally, unless we assume abnormally low kindergarten classes coming into those 2 schools, right off the jump, there's a need for 2 additional K-4 teachers. And we'll talk more about this on the next slide as well. But at this point, we think Venable it is not very likely at all that they will have a significant dip in their K enrollment. That just does not seem likely at all for them. Burley Moran has been a little bit harder to predict in recent years because of the shift with the Hardy Drive community going over to Venable. Other factors we're looking at is Greenbrier. They have been in a bit of an enrollment decline for the past few years. And at the same time that that's happening, we are bracing to manage the growth that we're expecting to see come forward at Jackson High and Clark based on the current zoning for those elementary schools. And that's largely based on predictions for when net additions to the affordable housing units come online in those existing school zones. Johnson's been relatively steady. So the shifting dynamics driven by housing and zoning changes in the city are requiring us to take a hard look at the elementary school zones next year. And so one of the things you'll see when we get into the budget requests, you'll see a $50,000 placeholder to ensure we can get necessary consulting supports to help us with analyzing all of this and also then come up with our recommendations for elementary school zones.
Ms. Powell, would there not be staff in 5th grade that could move to the 4th grade positions?
Well, not for next year. So I'm just
I'm just like, so those 4th grade, that cohort's small. So
Oh,
there's
you're
gonna be
saying
a
moving
fewer
back
number of
from Walker.
students at Walker.
right. So when you look at enrollment at Walker, which is its own fun thing to predict, we've had it in the past, major exits of students where families make different choices for Walker and Beaufort, and then they reappear at CHS. Right. So we watch what we call cohort survival in that process. And on one of the budget explanation sheet for enrollment, we use multiple linear regression models where we weight different factors. Basically, I play with the weights. There's a whole string of these for every school that I use. We look at it anywhere from 5 to 10 years of history, coupled with the upcoming cohort, and we put different weights on those to look at different scenarios for projections. Based on all the models that were run for Walker, and those models do consider the ramp that some families used to take. We don't see a decline at Walker this year. And that is substantial enough where we can lose staff. Yes, there are 2. I mean, this is not a new phenomenon that we have occasionally. A couple, 1 or 2 cohorts, whatever, going up that are smaller. But all I can tell you is that in the aggregate, and we could do a whole session on enrollment projections. I can get all this stuff, so I'd be happy to show anybody the point books and the formula and how it all works. But if there wasn't enough of a loss at Walker to look at pulling staff. That's not to say it couldn't happen, because that piece of the choices families make, but intuitively, one of the things we ask are people going to want to stay, because I think look at our map, these kiddos that are going into kids now are going to be there in the middle school, so maybe people will leave in anticipation of that.
And I think the part you also have to take into consideration too, that's one of the factors, is that when you because those 2 schools have a little bit of a smaller 4th grade, when you divide the number of teachers that are still required, some of those pockets are enough still to make a class here. So you could most certainly, if you cut a teacher, that would then increase the class sizes here at Walker. I think that would be the unintended consequence.
And that is another factor. We also see in requests the level of need. They're enlarging class sizes would go against the trend, against the spirit of every other request that are even there. So, but great question. So continuing on with this slide, Dr. Odie is going to take you into some great details about our L population and the role that plays in all of this. Because not only does the L population impact our need for specialty resources, L teachers, it also is impacting the class size of the regular class size requirement or target that we get to do. So moving past elementary, which we will talk about just a little bit more on the next slide. Hold on, second, Leslie, on the bottom there. When it comes to CHS, it's a little bit different in that it really, when you move past elementary, it's not just the student population that's driving it, but it's also the master schedule that is driving what's needed as far as staffing. So those two things have to be looked at together. And current enrollments coupled with demands for extra sections are indicating that additional teachers are needed to support the English department and the social studies department for next year in order to allow flexibility to accommodate varied student needs, interests, and expanding course offerings, and just making sure that the class sizes don't get. So now I'm doing the next slide. Sorry, I know there was a lot on that one slide. Please flag me if you have questions. All right, I know this is a lot on one slide, and that's well, I'll try to actually one slide, so but on the chart, it's showing on one page every K-4 school, and it shows the top section is like where they are now based on their fall teachers, fall enrollments, official fall enrollments back in September, and their class sizes. And then you see the FY25 projection that we're using for purposes of staffing. Unfortunately, the students don't show up in nice packages that line up with in the neighborhoods that line up with our target class sizes. So there is a little bit of an art to this. Right in gray, I did go ahead and highlight where we have those smaller cohorts moving out. And again, unless we're going to just assume that we can bank on those small cohorts moving in for kindergarten, which could happen, or we could have cohort loss in the other grade levels. It's just hard at this point to say we wouldn't need 2 additional elementary teachers. Given birth rate trends in Charlottesville since pre-pandemic, we may not actually see a net increase in K enrollment. A lot is really going to depend for next year on how the L student population moves and how we see those net additions of 4,000 units coming on. Again, within the 10 square miles, and it's really hard to get the students to land where they need to target class sizes. Our current EDO K through class size targets range from 19 up to 24. And that's for grades K through 3, and that's specified by the Department of Education. The differences school to school depend on the disadvantaged population percentage. And of course, just like everything else with EDO, it's always looking in the rears. So, don't be surprised if you see some of those numbers shift. But that's the range we're working in. And we do have to just really monitor both the kindergarten enrollments starting in the spring and then into the early summer. We have to look at re-registrations and enrollments to make decisions as soon as we can and working with principals to determine if teachers have to be reassigned within buildings or worst case scenario reassigned across. That's just the way we have to manage it with the ones. So now we'll take a peek at demographics and race, and this is a set of charts in a series of longitudinal data that's been maintained since Renee and I in Charlottesville. It's an interesting set of longitudinal data. These snapshots from the end of 2003. So this is the official June numbers. Is what this chart reflects that are reported in the DOE. It's from 2003, 2013, and 2023. And you can see that we remain a very diverse school system. There was a very significant change that continues to impact and somewhat complicate looking at this data in a longitudinal fashion. And that is it started in 1997, but the official guidance came out in 2000. The states had some flexibility between 2000 and 2010 as to how they implemented. The federal government changed race and ethnicity reporting for what they call single race and ethnicity reporting, where you had your Asian, white, black, so forth, and you self-identify as one, whichever you most closely identify with. Since 2000, they went to multiple reporting, so you can pick multiples, and the number of options has expanded exponentially. So, whereas when you look at the really old charts from back in the 90s, it was kind of like black and white, of course, for many, many years, and then now you see Those who identify just as white, you're reflected in the blue. Those who identify only as Black or African American are in orange, and then that mixed group is what keeps growing. And so it's just an interesting dynamic for people who've been watching this data for a lot of years. That's what's going on there, but it's not like it's exactly the same data set either. The next slide, this is the last one that I have for you, is about our disadvantaged population. And disadvantaged is identified not by us. It's related to the family and how they're tapped into other programs like TANF. Different programs, yeah, there's multiple ones, but it's not something that we prescribe. It comes in through data that's shared with us with state agencies. But the pie charts on the top look at the percentages of our overall disadvantaged student population in relation to those same three races and ethnicity categories of white, Black, and then the bar charts at the bottom. So the top is like of our disadvantaged population, what groups of students make that up. The bottom set of bar charts looks at the question of within this group of students, how many need are classified or identified as disadvantaged. And you'll see that our Black students continue to have the highest percentage of having that disadvantaged status. And students identified as disadvantaged always have been over 50% for Charlottesville City, and for the year of 2023, it was 50%.
Kim, thanks for that. Just so 50% of our student population was Hispanic as of
In the last school year.
right. 10 years ago, similar amount, less.
It's always since
It's a pretty stable number.
The year we've ever been under 50. During the pandemic, we went up. We saw a lot more white students were identified as disadvantaged during the pandemic. But what I'm seeing this year is it's quickly shifted back. And I guess that had to do with the families that are applying for student benefits. The pandemic whacked out the data for a year or two there, but now it's very normal, and it's always been over 50%, but we have not even during the then we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide and take a look at our students who are English learners. I'm looking at this chart. It's clear to see that enrollment is continuing. When you look at where we are today with our students who are English learners as compared to where we were in the pandemic, you see a sharp. We typically report the enrollment numbers twice a year, in the fall and in the spring. Fall means September 30th and spring March 30th. But you'll see here that we did add an extra data point for you to show where we are right now in the winter. So with a big number, almost 747 students that are English learners, continually growing. Next slide, please. So here you see just another way to look at the growth from that previous slide. Our population of our students that are English learners is changing rapidly. Since the pandemic, like I said before, and this year we see even a sharp increase right there with additional 47 students from the fall to the winter. So we had that one little bit back in 2021, but everything else has been really increasing in our students with the one thing pandemic was really
That can grow for those based on happening in the city with families or
and because coming from through the IRC, looking at who has arrived already, there's been a trend as well. So Dr. Powell would be projected.
is there ever a herd community that reports
Oh, there's a max.
Well, you know, this is, based on different parts of the country, probably absorb.
Yeah, I can certainly, I know from my experience, we've been interested in the Catholic unit from Catholic Charity. And so they brought in the refugees and so they just looked to see where these, families wanted to go. And then provide opportunities for housing and spaces and educational opportunities. So it's our job to welcome them and to teach them. Oh, I agree. Oh,
If the community is affordable housing, maybe within the community, and I'm not starting out. You know, or we're we know we're displacing other families. A whole other conversation, but I mean, there's not.
yeah, we received them, but I will certainly, look into that to see if there's ever a max. We know that we receive our families, our students, and then we make ask for the staffing to support them, so that we can have all. So we'll go on to the next slide, which is the projection slide. We look at the projections for our students, who are policy, which you can see that we are projected to have 854 students it's a wonderful year for us because it adds to our diversity. Our students learn from each other. We love having a diverse community, and it creates the challenges that we. And so we want to make sure that we staff properly and provide the appropriate supports for our students and for their families.
Dr. Ernie, is just are these additional students to our total population, or is the population of English language learners of the whole?
It's projected to be 850.
But is that like 100 more students than we have enrolled in the division? Like, are we adding 100 students to the division? So the denominator is being bigger. Thank you for helping me go back to high school.
Probably interpret it looks like 75 to 8% of our enrollment is English.
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's what I'm really.
And Mr. Meyer, one of the things that we talked about, and I know I said this during the last budget cycle. You know, it's one thing when we have someone that's moving from another district and we're talking about a teacher, but when we're talking about our English learners, we're talking about 2 teachers because we're talking about they need their general education supports. And they also, not always, because sometimes students come to us with language, but a lot of times, many of these are level 1 students. So we're talking about they need their general education teacher, plus we're adding their ELS teacher as well. So I mean, it's double the expense for 1 student, which is
This speaks like historically, the students that are coming, that are receiving English language services, particularly those that are at a lower level. Are they also behind in their native language academically?
Sometimes that is the case. It is not always the case. Not always. That is the case. Often they're not literate in their home language, and their families are not literate in their home language. And so it's our duty to support.
Just thinking they're not like free. Yeah.
Yeah. If we're getting to the point
If proportionately a substantial number of than we are.
And then like bureaucratically with special ed education, are we able to assess students in their native language so that we're not like missing them with sped services. Because they're, I don't know, if my question makes sense. I think
So we, for a variety of reasons, schools are assessed in English. So our practices for them reflect, their like language proficiency as well as how we might practice them. So we work very closely with Dr. Powell, who does together on helping to use differentiate between a language difference and a learning community. And it was students academic language proficiency. We are much more
And we have non-verbal assessments, which are very helpful. But that's truly a universal screening, the non-verbal, like IQ tests, the things, those are things that need to be transferred.
that would be a very specific identification though. Right, not necessarily.
Right, especially when you're moving on, like, actual picture.
Right, I guess I'm more concerned about. Learning this, yeah.
one, yeah, and one of the big, that different from some of the other, does require to say, appropriate instruction, and so.
But we're not able to get them appropriate instruction necessarily in the native language to know whether there's a disconnect between.
But we do know that our students who come to us younger fare much better than our students who come to us at the later grades.
We certainly get high schoolers that are level one students that are coming. And we get kindergarten. Often our students, they come as a level one student, they grow, they're more spongy and they grow so quickly. And so that, of course, we all know that we may know that it's going to be currently now our access testing that we're doing with our condition and we looked at that data to see how much our students are working their English.
So I would be curious to know, like, with these numbers, right? With so many new developments in Charlottesville and my communities is growing and adding additional housing, how are these numbers factored in? We can see like all of the growth with like these new developments, adding additional regions. That's gonna bring more people to the area. Have those numbers been factored in? We talk to developers and come see what they're.
But I think we have been working very closely. There was, I don't say we weren't communicating well, but I think we had been left out of the loop a little bit. So I know we've been working on tightening that piece of communication so we can have a better understanding. This how we've been recently invited to some of these, she's recently reinitiated some things to help with that communication.
So I have a monthly meeting now with Neighborhood Development Services, which is helpful. And also this CHRA or sorry, I was with the letters. I sit on their calls, but more importantly, because so much of those meetings aren't really information meetings, I can email on sailing, those a little different phases are opening. But one of the other big things we're doing is we have we re-upped with Well and Cooper Center this year. And we're getting them to recast what's called the student yield rates for housing, which is an analysis that they do. Well, Cooper is the branch of VA that actually does enrollment projections for the whole state for all of us. And so the yield rates, I think it's characterized by 3 different housing types: single family homes, townhomes, and apartments. And so then what that enables us to do is say, if we know X number of apartments are coming online, so if we can use the student yield rates, kind of help us project how many students we might expect to show up at our door based on these additional units coming online. Where we've been now with like Kenilwood and South First Street is we don't have a significant net increase yet because they closed section while we're building it, so it's only when it won't be at the very end, it's really, you'll see the full effects until all the sections come over. And even though the kindergarten, the birth rates have been down for Charlottesville, there is this anticipation for how the situation that as soon as that condition of the board will be with how the events happen, that we will have more families coming. That's what, well, people, of course, they're feeling over the corridor, exceptional. So yeah, great question. We have to be as loud with all of that.
Here we see how we're currently staffed regarding the sales teacher ready to school. You'll see that that asterisk at minimal, that's for this year only, that was added this year. So it's not already. The ratio of students, to ESL teachers is there, and you know, we pride ourselves in keeping our ratio of students to teachers. We have ESL at 30 to 1. The state says 50 to 1. That's what any school division must do. So we've done a great job of keeping it 30 to 1. It really allows for our ESL teachers to hone in and focus and support our students, which is why we also see lots of them. Next. So again, I just mentioned the state has that project, that's the regulation of 50 to 1. We're proud of that work that we do to support our students who are English learners. Extremely fortunate to have increased our FTE last year for the current year about 3, as our projections had indicated that we would need those additions, and we did based on those trends. And so we do need to continue to add to our ESL staffing. We're asking for 3.5 FTEs in this budget to maintain that.
Just, sorry, one last question on this. Looks like it's about 20% of the students now are ELs, are total student population. So what's the total ratio?
Of our L.
Yeah.
Actually, I will get that.
It's like 20 to 25% or something.
Yeah, 747.
Reading literate students.
Do some quick math. Close to 20%. Another question.
The 0.5 is available, but with the data that rarely.
So they have an uptick in numbers after the budget, at the end of the budget, so yeah, it's vacancy statements. So if we're gonna keep that position, we need to bake it into our next budget.
We see them.
City staff is aware of these numbers, right?
They would be.
Yeah, so when we've done this, so last year when we met with them, we had the same conversation. They'll hear the same thing when we.
1 out of every 5 students is an EL leader, basically.
So we prioritize staff to the ratio, but certainly the state. That's a big difference. 30 and 50 to 1, right? Huge.
I think on a given day, though, if you ask the teachers, they would want probably the number to be even lower.
Right.
You know, and so we were talking and I said, you know, if you're gonna meet the standard, then it's 50 to 1, and you're gonna do a good job at it, you're gonna do 30 to 1, but if you want to get even better, then that you would need to drive the ratio down even lower, which is a huge ask.
If you look at that slide, that where our ratios are right now, we're not even meeting the 30 to 1 that we boast about and aim for. So, well, Greenbrier is the only one that's in the boat. All of the others are higher. You see it's bad for the visible. And slightly higher than the others, so.
And then you have to look at that what we're thinking?
I think so, and I don't know what's been going on. I've heard about some changes with. Minimal in bus definitely shows the town of where you drive, see the. They were just changing a lot here, and so you see a lot. And then you have. And when government was the minimal. These that emerged there this year.
Yeah.
Are we seeing improvements with the additional positions that we've already provided to
Oh, yeah.
the PLL?
That access thing.
I guess that's right, sit in there, like 3.5 is a lot. And so are we getting a results for that investment? And then what are we doing to provide ongoing professional development to our general education teachers who have these students in their classroom?
Yes.
I'm gonna talk about PSYOP again in my pitch that everybody get trained.
So that's an excellent question because our instructional coaches are being PSYOP trained now. And they're then turning that over into.
Is that the training model, a train the trainer? Like that's the way that's PSYOP? It's not like, overreading.
No, we have a PSYOP trainer coming in, to teach.
To teach the instructor coaches, right? And then the
Executive
instructors.
Yeah.
But is that how? Like as opposed to the PSYOP people teaching our teachers?
Well, I appreciate it. Under your question, I think that when we think about budgetary pieces, this is the most efficient way to do it.
Yeah.
I will tell you that when I was a principal, I became PSYOP trained, and then I was trained. So it's a way to do it. Of course, if we had a national trainer come to every school and train each teacher, it would be different. But this is a way that we can work and be financially.
So are the students spending more time with the IA? I want to think.
When I know the instructional coaches, but I know.
Yeah.
The instructional coaches are being trained, and then they're trained. No problem.
And so what I know is that when Dr. Faust does her presentation, and just thinking about some of her previous presentations and also what she can bring back to, I think she will show that the students are showing the growth, and that's why I feel like I can speak confidently too. She always talks about, our students, when we get them sooner, we see them exiting much quicker, so we can make sure all the data points, we know the data points you will. Like over time data points, so we can make sure she has that information for her next presentation.
I would just anticipate like when we get city council.
Right. Mhm.
Maybe that she has now for access from the lab, because we're administering it now, we won't get results at the end of the school year, or when here up in the summer. So.
Oh, the scores, yes.
it takes a lot, unfortunately. But we certainly have, we kind of the one from last presentation was, we certainly have the results from last year.
Yeah, anything I don't. That and. Normal assessments.
The sources of revenue that come in. The largest source. And it's city appropriations. 3%. It's our primary source of revenue for our operations. The state revenue is the second largest,
Hey, real quick, that small little local amount there. What's included in that?
What's included in that is primary or non-resident fee. And the money that we're taking in from, local donations. That is for our, brand, like our local program. The next slide is our state revenue. As I presented at the school board meeting on the board, so the vision. They increased by 75%. The capital was released the day after the school board meeting, and the overall impact to CCS loss of $3 million state revenue. Revenue, like SOQ, where the LCI has criteria and the budget formula, we had a decrease of about 1 to 1. There are state revenues like incentives where revenues for programs that are law, but are intended to be part of resources for fooding. The two revenues that are classified for COVID and the grocery sales tax. And these revenues were eliminated for the coming year. So that was an impact about. Next slide is the governor's budget. There were technical adjustments and it is related to funding formula, presently LCI and APL. The estimated projections on the state sales tax is updated. The governor's budget for year 25 had a 1% one-time budget payment. There were SOQ funded personal support positions. And then the following fiscal year 2026, there's a salary increase for the SOQ instructional support staff. The next slide is our city revenue. The city support is essential for the operation. It's a significant portion of our budget due to our high LCI. This slide shows 10 years trend of increased contributions to the school. The red line is the actual increase amount fee on schools. In FY 29 and 2023, you'll notice that the city contributed more than 40% of the new curriculum for real estate. I'm sorry. Yeah, fiscal year 19. Oh, sorry. Yeah, fiscal year 19. But post pandemic, we have received what we
With this is their projected, or is this the actual?
This is that.
This is the actual, so this is the fix at the end of the year. What they actually got, not what they budgeted to
You know,
get.
this is the red bars when we actually receive.
But regarding the percentage,
Blue bars, I believe, are the calculation based on.
The blue bars are the city's calculation of what the 40% of new personal and real property.
my observation is usually what's been happening the last couple of years is they underestimate the revenue coming in from the real estate tax, for example, not real estate property tax, and so like I don't know what the number is from the FY 23.
They're looking at this starting in November. They actually start getting their true real numbers. This is not through the end of February. Because last year, they told us 4 million. And by the time we went to, code budget for adoption, it had increased another 200,000. So they're continuously looking at this right now. So our knowledge is.
I think my point here is that I think that 40% number is actually a lower amount than what it actually is. Because they had a surplus for FY 23. It's like a $12 million off, or $20 million.
Well, so the surplus can be driven by, so this is only applies to the personal property and real estate, which should be
Right.
based on actual assessment. Shouldn't have to, and it shouldn't have to do with, it should be based on the assessments and assuming the 100%. I don't know if it's 100% collection. But their surplus can be driven by vacancy savings on their side, it can be driven by their other taxes like the
Meals and lodging.
meals and lodging.
Yeah.
That's not in.
So that's my point is usually there's been a couple $1 million in surplus on real property taxes in the last couple of years. After they do their final
Even after
true
the
up,
assessment.
and I don't think that's being counted here is my point. So it's actually, we're not getting, it's probably a couple $100,000. That blue bar should be higher.
We don't go back and true up after that. I mean, when we
Interesting exercise you might do, but or we don't. And
So now we're gonna go into the expenditures and how we spend the. This slide shows the largest expenditure for the division of salaries, education and the people business and personnel under. Second largest expense is construction services, and they are the big cost of the and. They are clear. Yes. The standards of quality of investment in the Constitution has the staffing standards for personnel and support position. And was the state funding formally uses to calculate the state share of revenue. This slide shows the divisions of instructional staff to the state SOQ. CCS staff about 213 FTEs over the state. In dollars, CCS cost is 25 million. The question came up, I believe, at the last meeting of the staff over the state for social workers and our social learning counselors. These positions are classified as positions with the state. The state funds both positions based on the 4300 students, and we're exceeding that standard by.
And I know that's been a very big conversation, particularly as we talk about social emotional supports and so I think that's why the presentation last month was so vitally important. As Ms. President talked about, you know, just what the continuum looks like, how we start, and so I think it's just really important to see that we are only receiving support for 12 of the 36 positions.
The next slide is our teacher compensation. The teacher pay scales were updated with the additional 2% that was effective January 1st. A teacher with a bachelor's degree at step 0 is making $55,029, or an hourly rate of $39.31. We showed the hourly rate because the 200-day contract teacher worked 1,400 hours for 7 days, 7 hours a day, or 200 days. And this is a key piece of information when we're comparing our salaries for other positions. For example, in Arlington Public Schools, starting teacher salary is $5,906. This is $947 more than CCS. But Arlington teachers have a 200-day contract with work hours of 1,500. So when we calculate that hourly rate of $37.32, and then compare that with at 1,400 hours, the comparable salary is $2,048. And the same goes for us. The starting teacher salary is $549 for the CCS. But when we do the math to compare the hours, without all teachers work 1,450 hours, their starting teacher pay at our 1,400 hours is $53,000.
Renee, thank you for this. And I like to think things of as total compensation, which includes your health insurance value and retirement contributions, life insurance premiums, et cetera. How does that, do we have a total number for that? I know you don't have it here, but.
No, I don't. I don't have our benefits factored into this and able to compare to each lookout.
Do staff get a report though of that total compensation? You might say?
When they receive their pay stub, they see how much the employer's call is for their health insurance and retirement. So it's printed, however, look at it or not.
So they see an annual.
They don't see it annually, they see it on the pay stub, and then they look at the December pay stub, and then we see the annual. And we're for, I think, at the end of the year. I believe it's at the end of the year. Salary. Whatever. Balances, you know, that are benefits, retirement, all of that. That's what we have the ability to start something or I mean, I think it would be nice. Yeah, because I think those types of benefits often realize. Well, like I said, it's on their pay stub. I mean, the information is out there. So it's just a matter of whether they're looking at the pay stub. We can take that information and put it in another sheet.
Would that be the equivalent of W-2 though? It's only W-2.
No, the W-2 is showing their federal wage, their Social Security wage. And then it does show the total.
Yeah, it's fine.
But it doesn't show the VR. VR is a cost and retirement contribution is pretty much what way the medical is the cost. I think every healthcare and other.
And then it's completely fine when that person becomes employee adds to the RS. That's correct.
I do think to Mr. Meyer's point, that it is a very important exercise, and I was telling Ms. Powell, I may have even mentioned last year, we, in my previous division, we did do that exercise with employees. I think but what we really found, and I think it would still hold true, is that, and I say this because I'm speaking about myself, as a new teacher, some of those things were just not as important to me. Like, I wasn't thinking that one day I would be 4 years from retirement or 2 years from retirement. And so, that the wage part is just so important when trying to attract someone. While I think to teachers who are approaching the middle of the road, they're like, so what do those things look like and how do they compare to other places? But I do think in the attracting part, the compensation part is the part that particularly the teachers were interested in.
Yeah, sorry, I mentioned that because the health insurance is worth a lot of money. Right. And people I don't think realize that, and or again, it's more and more being pushed on the individual versus your employer covering it. And if you have one partner, your partner is again an independent contractor who doesn't have that, and then you're getting it, and we're providing it for your partner and the rest of your family too. That is a lot of value. Anyway, so I mean that almost becomes 20% of your compensation if it's a $15,000 to $20,000 family of 4 or 5. Again, gold plated or very nice health insurance package. So, anyways, I just would encourage us to also present that. It may not be this presentation appropriate, but yeah, think about that also. Thank you.
The next slide. As you recall, Evergreen, prepared a study for, they recommended dedicated management pay rate for our administration and in general. The administration group would include our APs, coordinators, directors, and then the general group, they are custodians, our secretaries, our administrative, our helpers and NIA. The steps within the pay grades will be evenly progressed. And most importantly, it will provide a competitive structure, environment structure within these papers. And would also unify and allow us to go here.
SOQ staff, these are not SOQ staff.
Yes,
Or
they
some.
are assistant principals.
Okay.
And principals are SOQ staff. And then, and so we're here.
All these are also getting the state 2%.
Not every.
Oh, yes, yes, they all, everyone received 2%.
State.
Right, not funded.
Some of our employees.
Yeah,
That's
so
what I was trying to understand. Or some of these,
Like,
Right,
so
so
the
when-
state's money for. To go back to the client, that you pick, and then we staff and test of that. So if you want to choose which teacher is it?
And one of those examples would be like at an elementary school. I don't know exactly what the number is, but I know we have 6 elementary schools, 6 small elementary schools relatively. And so I would imagine that the SOQ may be it may be with a number of schools, number of students, it may be somewhere 2 to 3 assistant principals at the elementary level, but we have an assistant principal at every school because we feel like we definitely need an assistant principal. But what happens is like, when we have to issue that 2% raise, we only get the money for those assistant principal positions that are SOQ. And then we have to ask you, or we find the money to pay the rest of the people who are not covered. Because it would be what Ms. Julie's saying, we would have to pick and choose who we give a raise to. Not 400 teachers.
Yeah, and all that stuff. To go back to the instructional staff comparison, to Dr. Gurley's point, assistant principal, the SOQ standards is really need to. And we're staffing at 7. So they're only giving me 2% on a 2.59, and then I said factor in the LPI.
The SOQ, you'll hear a lot about re-benchmarking.
Same,
SOQ, JLAR it's a standing recommendation, but no one is going to re-benchmark SOQ, so here we are. There's not, even the 4 school divisions in the Commonwealth staff above this.
The next slide is health insurance. Social city schools is a self-funded plan. This gives us medical and pharmacy plan experience. The global medical 9.9%. 2023, it was 10.7%. Today, the first 5 months of this fiscal year, reason for the rising cost is the specialty drugs, gene therapy solution, medical inflation, and just managing the residual effects.
Is medical and pharmacy everything, or is that?
Medical pharmacy is,
So we're up 23%.
I mean, and yeah.
All the school is 9.9, but we're 9.9, we're double that. Hope there's a plan to.
Well, there are 2 different factors. So 9.9% represents the inflation, and then even if our claims were the same, then our claims are not.
And also look at the word globally, you know, and you're looking at a small proportion of the country. No, they're not.
They're not.
We're just giving you a comparison.
Right, but we're.
23% are
If we
utilization.
keep on the same
That's how.
track, though, it's still looking at doubling.
It's painting a picture for you that our health insurance rate is go up from what we did last. But so it probably won't go up 23%, but it might be in the range of 5%.
When you can.
We have our initial renewal right now. Budget change out of it for 7.7% increase, or $901,000.
Ms. Myers, when you asked if there's a plan, what do you mean?
Well, we can't have our health insurance keep on climbing 10-20% a year.
Right, and we're gonna talk,
So what's the plan?
I'm gonna talk about that in the budget changes.
Okay.
So what that would potentially mean, so I have it all lined out. 2 more slides.
Well, no, only right now.
Oh, okay. All right, so budget changes, you can go on to the next slide. Outline here, so just gonna start by saying there were a lot of requests. And so we've been working with staff and working with principals to go through the requests. So what you see on the far right corner, what you see in the far right column, that's your strategic plan goals. So make sure that we're rooting our request in our strategic plan so that it makes sense to people who are putting that up. So as we look through the budget change documents, you're going to see that the first category of salary and benefits, So the first thing we would like is for our teachers to receive their step. And it's the step plus 1.75, which means that the raise is an average of 3%. And we would do that similarly for the administration and the support groups, that the raise would be an average of 3%. And then I just want to remind everybody, as we're looking at the budget change document, that we did issue that 2% raise, which went into effect this month, which, yes, this we already had to pay, already had one pay. So we had the 2%, so that was, remember that was not budgeted, so we picked that up. We picked that up in the budget for next year, so that's why you see that here. And so we just talked a few moments ago about our insurance. And so we know that we have people who have some serious medical things going on. And so they are utilizing the insurance. It has gone significantly up. We received our quote back. So now what this is doing is this is forcing us to evaluate whether we stay with the current provider or we look at a different provider. And so one thing we know is that the unintended consequence of staying with our current provider is we run the risk of transferring that cost over to our employees, which we do not want to do. No one wants to get a raise and then their insurance also goes up. It's just bad business. So I say that confidently that we don't want to do that. But what that also means is that we've been, I guess we bid it out. What's the word? What's my technical term? We bid it out. And so we do know that some insurance providers have come in much lower. And so we know that's going to be a hard conversation, whether you stay and transfer the cost, and knowing that Charlottesville has been with Aetna as our provider, has been with Aetna forever. But you see how much that cost is there, which is listed that $901,000. Or we say, we deserve better. We don't need to continue to have costs go up, and we switch our insurance provider. I mean, it's a little pain initially, but if we can get quality service and good supports, and then maybe we can switch it, and then the cost is a lot lower, and then we're not transferring that cost to our employees. I mean, that's ideally. So when you speak of a plan, those are the conversations. That's the work that the finance team is doing on the back end, in concert with our HR department.
What other providers? Anthem. Comparable benefits, comparable benefits, one of the things we also recognize is to modify our plan to be more advantageous with the market.
And so we do have a vendor who works for us. Yeah. Right. So we've not just taken so I do want to make sure I say they've not given us a number and we said, oh, that number's too high. We need to go look somewhere else. Pierce Group does do that work for us. They've been, going back and forth, trying to negotiate and getting it down. And, they, for lack of better terms, are digging their heels in at them. They're digging their heels in. So this is where we are. So we either have to say, yes, we're going to take the number that you're going to give us, or we need to decide, is there a better way to provide healthcare insurance to our staff?
I think also, if I could, just my experience in the market, right? I think you also have to be careful when Anthem comes back to you and says, we would love your business for 5% less. Guess what they're going to do to you next year? 27% more. Because they can't, because they know you moved and it's administrative burden, and they put that back on you. And so, no Pierce Group, they do great work, and trust that they're doing that back and forth. But just while 7% feels heavy, taking less right now could hurt in the future and something that is just. And everyone's seeing that increase. I don't know any market right now that's not seeing that huge increase and just. It's the nature of that business on some level.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, we're playing the market, we're in the market, which is great, that's what I would expect, being competitive. I would agree with my experience with dealing with health insurance companies, very similar, having jumped around a couple of times. What I would like, I think, management to think about is if there's $20,000 we're paying for a family, or whatever, for a whole teacher's family or staff person's family, but the partner works at UVA, and get a UVA set of benefits, full boat. Is there a way we get them pushed over to UVA? Or another employer? Because we play that game with my wife's employer all the time, and we're constantly comparing, and we jump back and forth depending on. And so that my employer, I go back to my employer and say, hey, give me some of that cost savings, I want my salary increase, and you get savings and I get savings.
Yeah.
Alright, so does that, we offer that?
We already offer a spouse or spouse, so if the spouse wants to be on our health plan, if they have health insurance, we charge a fee.
Do we incentivize them for our staff to go on spouses?
I mean,
Or
we're
on the
charging,
parents?
we're charging them $250 a month to be a. If the spouse is with us, so that would be an incentive to move on.
So they are cost sharing on some of this, and then they would have this.
Right, so they're being charged $250 a month, so I mean, you would either make the decision that, hey, you go get on yours, so I don't.
It's 500, it's 250 per pay, it's 500.
Oh, right, yes.
So it is very cost prohibitive for the spouse to have a spouse, with CCS if they have access to what's called 1200. Now, is there an incentive to push the other way? But we do, if there's a deterrent.
But I mean, with some regards, that is the incentive to push the other way, because $500 is a lot of money a month.
So I don't understand, I mean, we've seen 10%, give or take a little bit increase every year I've been on. I mean, it hasn't changed, it's all good. And I mean, to, Vern's point, you know, I mean, that's just the nature of happening everywhere. So I mean, why are we now considering a different move? When we've taken such good care, I mean, I don't want our employees to have to feel the impact of this, and we can find a way so it doesn't. Right. And I realize we haven't seen everything else that you want to add, but to her point, and I'm gonna trust her because of the work that she does. I mean, I don't want it to next year, then we hit something that is gonna have to make us switch gears again. So I'd rather, I mean, that's a benefit, our employees deserve that. And so I personally, you know, I would not be comfortable jumping ship because we're increasing an amount that we've done every.
Right, and we're just saying we're evaluating it, and so we just know that in a time where it's gonna go up, we just need to decide how we not have this to negatively impact our teachers. I mean, that's the only thing we're saying at this point. I mean, Peers Group is our vendor. They're saying, here's your array of options. We are going back and forth trying to get the numbers down. I think ultimately what we all want and what you want is we don't want our teachers to get a raise and then their check is less because of insurance.
In another way. You have to look at something else. I don't know if we got this big picture and weigh it, but I think all the benefits, we're happy with that now. And I don't know. Great providers right now, but for the most part, you know, if they've been a good provider and our employees are getting the care that they need.
Yeah, I think just to your point, getting a little creative about where that 7% lives, right? Like, I don't recall the exact number breakdown of what you pay for the employee only versus the employee plus child, children, family, which is getting creative in math. So that burden isn't so heavy on maybe what we know to be a single parent with one child, or just how do we make sure we're sharing that 7% in our pay?
And we can definitely bring that back in your budget coming up. We can talk about what the different scenarios look like. I mean, I will tell you, nobody at this table is excited about switching insurance. You know, not, you already have a ton of things already going on, because we know what that transition is like. With this number of employees, it's just not fun times, and no one wants to switch insurance. Any other questions before I continue on down? Great discussion. Thank you for that feedback. The next area we have are our recurring and non-discretionary costs. And so I want to highlight, you know, some of our big ticket items that you see, which are our maintenance contract, our transportation contract. And then we had already had a discussion, and we knew that we would be absorbing some of the onboarding of K-Tech. And so you see that reflected here. And I think we are continuing to have conversations with the city about the transportation and maintenance contract. But right now, these are some of our best estimates.
Where did we land last year with the percent for transportation?
This is, we never had a 25% increase. We've never had a 25% increase, but much of that estimate word is based on what information we have about what's going on with the ATU negotiations. And we don't know the ATU negotiations, and we won't know for sure on those outcomes until February sometime. But so those are projections baked into that estimate based on the best information we had available. When I say we, I'm referring to the transportation leadership.
So this is a change. I want everybody to realize.
All these are projections. So we
What is the total?
it was over 3 million.
It was 13% last year.
Thank you. 13% this year. You know, we've never done 25 before, and we give it's 3.4. Almost 4 million that we already paid.
This is increasing.
When you present this to the city, can we make sure we separate the money that's going to circle back to them and those changes? That makes sense, because those are things that they control, we don't really, right? So
Well,
They know it.
And I think we want to have it every time.
on a separate side.
All right. Any other questions about this section?
It's worth the K-Tech numbers, about 300 and some thousand less than what was projected as the cost of acquiring the operational cost of acquiring ownership back in April. We had to give everything to council about K-Tech. And we went back and looked, and that number's lower than what they were given back in April. That's what it would take for us to take on the great operation.
So where were the savings at?
It was just, that was a projection, and part of that, I know we had some hedge in there in case Alamo had a drop in their participation in there for their tuition, so that's certainly part of it. I'd have to go back and dig in, but I can just tell you at a glance, I went back to check and like, what was the last time we said when we were in chambers, and I was like, ooh, okay, we're better than we were. I know part of it was that estimate assumed a certain a greater reduction of participation.
The 12,000 per parent square, is that just that for service or is that their off of it?
There's a bunch of moving parts in that.
Yeah, there's some.
So I took the total savings from moving to Parent Square to getting rid of the other services. And with the addition of the website hosting fees and the Parent Square fees, that's the increase to break even from where we were. The short answer.
So it's all the functionality on Parent Square. Like when I'm still doing signage.
Because that's me.
separate, not you. Not too, that's fine, stuff, it's fine, first trying to figure out the darn date, but, like parent conferences and that kind of stuff. Should it still be inside of these?
I don't know if it has that functionality.
Like Zoom, things like that,
Pardon me?
like something like a Zoom conference, is that what I'm- or scheduling, oh yes, it definitely has scheduling functionality, we're rolling it out, it's got a lot. RSVP, scheduling, volunteer sign up, things like that.
And can we get, the YMCA after school program linked in the parent square? Community partners. Pretty awesome. Thank you. This is my first so far.
All right. All good questions and all have been noted. Anything else in this section? Before we get to the curriculum? All right, well, we'll move right along. So here are, you'll see our school-based program supports and instructional improvements. And so I think I want to make sure I go back to where we started with our growth conversation that was led by Ms. Powell and Dr. Odie. And so you'll see here that, we're prioritizing what we do for our English language learners. So that very first line is strictly about growth. And so you see reflected there, our English as a second language program, our elementary growth, and then at the high school, we really want to focus on reducing that class size for English. And so that's adding in one position for English and one position for social studies. And so on that far right-hand column, you see that 7.5 positions. That 0.5 takes into consideration that 0.5 that we added to available for this school. And so there are special education supports that are needed at K-Tech and an additional CSA at CHS. We are increasing the number of CSAs, but we are doing that currently by repurposing some positions, moving a position from a school. So we don't need to ask for additional, beyond the one, we don't need to ask for that in the budget because we're repurposing some things here. So we're moving the position from Buford. We're moving that position over to CHS.
CSA.
Yes, the CSA. Yeah, the position that
It
has.
was already open, and right, you had identified.
Right. And with that one, I think I shared with you in my brief, with that one, Mr. Jordan really feels like with the number of grades, he has the number of supports. And so he put a hold on it. So we said, hey, we know where we can make good use of that position. So we will bring that position over. And then the ISB position, we've also.
Was also vacant at CHS.
Right.
Vacant ISB.
So we made the ISB position, we moved that position up a level, so that the ISB position is being paid on the same level as the CSA. And so that position is wrapped into all the meetings and the supports. And so that's another reason.
Can you talk to, what do you envision the CHS and its specialist positions doing at the?
All right, so twofold, we have written in the all-in plan that we had for this school year. Previously, we've had like truancy officers and people who were strictly tuned in on watching students' attendance, going out into the homes. I know that the model looks different in different places. Sometimes you have places where maybe a social worker and a part of it doing some well checks with families. They do those things. So we in Charlottesville have historically, it sounds like those things have been teased out and it's been a person's job. And we've not had anyone, I know since I've been here, no one's that's been their job to just do the attendance part. So we want to fold that back in. So I think we can use a little bit of the all-in funds because we've already earmarked it and it's not been filled. But we do want to make sure that that's a permanent placement within our budget so that we can ensure that we are keeping on top of our students who are.
What are they doing? Are they like running data to like find out who's not attending? And then what are they doing with that? Are they going to the homes? Are we taking care of it? Like, what's the?
So it's similar to the truancy position and they have.
I was just gonna say, in your, going on your. See, there is a budget request form that gives you detail on each one of these requests that are going to go through. And in the description, it talks about the investigation. We're gonna facilitate. The seven needs of our property assets, to.
Because I know one of the big changes, particularly to our regs, like with our school counselors, the amount of time that's spent in meetings versus the amount of times that are spent with students. And so that's another one where I know historically, maybe the school counselors may have been holding some of those school success meetings, but we know that, well, it's 80% of how much time do they do the students? 80. So 80% of their day, 80% of their time must be spent with students, not facilitating meetings. So it's as.
So what's the salary for two of these positions? If it's 111,290 divided by 2 less benefits, like what are we paying? We think is going to be able to do this job. I don't think it's $35,000 a year.
I think it's on the same scale as the CSA. I know we've spoken with, when I say we, I mean me, I've spoken with a school division who has seen some significant changes in student attendance, and the position was graded a lot lower. It was 2 people who had a really good rapport with the community, and they're just going out, touching bases with families, and what is it that you need, facilitating meetings, and those folks came from outside the building. Yeah.
But this person also addressed tardiness.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's a part of attendance, I mean,
Talk about absenteeism.
part of what must happen, big picture is, part of what needs to happen, big picture is whatever the accountability system is beyond us. I think we have some very hard conversations with families, but it pretty much stops with us because if no one's encouraging the student to come to school, and there's no carrot on the outside to ensure that the student is in, I mean, it really just stops with us. And so I know that here and in previous experience, the courts or court services or family services, they want to see what the interventions are. And so it can't be the school, I mean, not that it can't be the school counselor, but it can't solely be the school counselor, and it solely can't be the AP. And so we just kind of run out of options like, well, who can do these things?
Last month, when we talked a little bit about the end of the point, when we know that there's a continued need, we make decisions about what that need will be, and we do the best in the board of decisions that we need. And so, as we're thinking about student failing needs in that tiered approach, where what do we do for all students? What do we do for some students? What do we do for students? We are finding that what we're doing for a few is expensive. It's a lot of workers' time, and that's deeply invested work. And so as those more people this would allow us to look at our needs and some of the support that they need to perform because, everything is going to be like. Will be part of our aligned framework.
And when we have someone assessing those needs, do we then have the staff and capacity in place to address those needs? And if we're all of a sudden putting people in the community at someone's doorstep and can identify 5 things for 32 kids, how are we really going to then do the work? Do we have the capacity to meet those needs, or are we just saying we identified a need?
No, I think that's what Ms. Rasnick has done a good job of at now bringing student services under one house. So if there's someone who's identifying the need, then we can say, we have an SEL person who, if it's about some social anxiety, if it's about there's a family need with regards to some type of essential need, then maybe we need to refer over to Ms. Bianca Johnson. If there's something with related to some student behavior, then I mean we built out the continuum. It's just where we're losing some traction is people who can be boots on the ground. I think that's the hard part. Like who has the time to be boots on the ground? So no, I'm not expecting that person, these 2 attendance people, to be the service provider for all of these students. They're working through our student services, and now all of these students are connected. And I think where the accountability parts are, like, this is the database of this is the student, these are the referrals. So now we have an understanding of who's making contact with the student, who's providing services for the student.
I think I can get behind this. I have some concerns about it being limited just to the high school. Like we know we have truant students in elementary and middle. It can be not catch them sooner, so that way.
And sometimes they're all in the same house.
Sure.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I mean, could it be one short over time, high school, 3/4?
I think any start is a good start. I agree. So I mean,
Just like attendance, I feel like attendance is not a new issue. I mean, I think we saw in the data that it's been exacerbated, like many things in recent years, but like, yeah, I'm concerned about is like getting the data to figure out who's not here, and then like, great, we've got some free spreadsheets and we know who the kids are, but we haven't actually done anything to improve our attendance.
No, I think this sounds really good, right? But if you're looking at the salary, are you gonna classify party to really do that? Right? There's a lot of case management that needs to happen here, and for $30,000-$40,000. Like, you know, you're not gonna get that quality person that's gonna be able to connect with the parents and do that case management. And not only that, being able to connect those folks to the resources in the community to support the family, that's the missing piece. And so if we're gonna be intentional about hiring somebody to do this work, I would hope that we will put more money behind it so that it's effective.
So where are the person sitting in the front desk? Or
Hey, so, no, this person is out. This person is out.
The title, right? Like the titles misleading. I thought they were sitting at the checking is in and out. So maybe it's a job title and maybe we work through that a little bit.
So it's much needed. I think it's definitely.
Well, we always like to hear add more money. That's true.
Family engagement person, right? Like
It's sort of, I mean, I think that's the part where we already have Ms. Bianca Johnson, so I think we can let's rework the title. I mean, it may even be a form of, we continue to work through our student support specialist position. That position continues to evolve. So that actually, it may fit, I'm looking at Dr. Johnson over there, it may fit within that same title, but Some student support specialists are in the building and some student support specialists work outside of the building. I mean, the thing it does do, it does what Ms. Cooper asked, if we make it a student support specialist right now, that is on a teacher scale, which brings the position up a lot higher.
So let me clarify, when you talk about 645, it's a salary of 43,473 days. And the Tuesday was 184 days.
They're actually on to.
We got a 200-day schedule. And then the benefits, all that is 12,100.
So they have their PO, they basically participated in professional learning on the day that they also help with our safety inspection, things that are required by the JS. I mean, I would agree with Ms. Cooper that I'm not opposed to paying some teacher like. I mean, yeah, this is a, if you think about the people who know the community and know the kids and are gonna actually have to see them like doing work.
I would say though, our CSAs, at times, have been very effective, with the number that they have, people who do that, in CSA work can be very effective with this. We also, we're advanced share, we do have some like our summer safety center, things that happen after the contact period. So I do potentially trade some days during the school year for the CSA staff to come in beyond the 200 days. So between the summer PD activities and other things.
Should we get ready without really fill up all there have resident school who use 10% of the building money toward battling absenteeism. So I think that adds up, 75,000. 732 of the money that they sent us. It's a good amount, and then so we have 3 years to use those funds. Obviously, plus 22, they didn't move about 2,000. So it goes towards, and but the sustainability is right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
look like you're adding money to it. So I will, I'm still going through I'm still going through here, so if I don't mention one that you wanted to hear, most certainly we can go to it. I wanted to point out next the feedback we received from staff is about how we support them, and one of them is student substitute. It is a big ticket number at this moment, and so I want to make sure that we'll have a big picture discussion in a moment, but right now, if we did a site-based sub, how we have it right now. So we have 2 site-based substitutes at Walker, Buford, and the high school. What this adds is a site-based substitute at each elementary school. And that's so that the principal has at their discretion to be able to use that body in the building. And someone's out every day. Let's just be honest, taking care of themselves. Someone's out every day. So this isn't a position that we ever wonder, like, will there be something for them to do? Somebody's out every day. You know, the thing that we will have a larger discussion about is, it's $1.2 billion if we implement this. We have implemented it currently with ESSER funds, but we know that that's about to end. And I can tell you that principals and staff would say that, you know, at secondary level, Walker on up, would hate to see the position go away because they count on it. But we knew that this day would come that we'd have to think about the sustainability. And so that's a conversation as we tease out, are all of these the things that will go forward for our ad for the city? Where will we land with this? But right now, we're putting it in the budget. And I think that our teachers and our principals have been very thankful about having this position. Yes, I see this
I'm fine with this, and that makes sense to me. I guess I would challenge us though, in how do we in future years not need so many substitutes?
Yeah,
And so is that, and I'm not saying have some kind of penalty to teachers or anything like that. If it's as part of their contract, they need to take wellness days, et cetera. But can we offer incentives for perfect attendance or something like that? Instead of spending 1.2 million and spend $600,000 on providing incentives to staff who have, and then we reduce the amount of that spend, right?
I definitely think we can think about how to incentivize. I think one thing we know is starting the first day of school, someone's absent. And I think we've done well lately. I'm looking over towards Ms. Lewis. We are bringing more people in. And we're seeing that, particularly at some of our hard to staff schools with subs. We're seeing that the temperature come down. I think it's just still a challenge in some spaces. And so, yes, we can incentivize, but there's still gonna be a gap there. And so in a perfect world, we would like to do both, incentivize people for not missing days, and we would also love to make sure we have the site-based sub. That's the perfect.
At some point, could we get a kind of a cost comparison to this 1.2 million versus what we spent in subs within a given year or the trend?
Absolutely. I think I think that one can be run with the click of a couple buttons. It's not a hard. That's not a hard.
We're spending some, would we be netting out some because we're saving on part-time subs because we have a full-time?
Well, and I don't want to misspeak, but I do know that is how we paid for some of the site-based subs because we didn't have subs. So the cost.
So that is net, right?
Oh, right time.
I think so, is that like, if you're a site-based sub, it's your job, and so you're showing up. And so there's dependability and reliability more so than an occasional sub, and so you're calling on teachers less frequently to cover class, which I think is very important to think through quite clearly.
Yeah, wherever I need you, you go. And I think.
From teachers that they are covering less.
But they still have to, and with this, even with two, unfortunately, they still have to come. And I think that's, if I were having a tough conversation, I would say, yes, we can have two site-based subs, but it still won't guarantee that you won't have to cover because even at two, it's not enough. It's not, definitely not. But fully staffed, two people, I can move you where I need you throughout the building.
Full-time, hourly.
They're full-time, but and so in line, we've had conversations about differentiated staffing. And so here you're going to see a few lines that read reading specialist, reading interventionist. And so what you see reflected there, we want to place supports at those schools because those are our level 3 schools. And so I know that historically what we've seen is that everyone gets the same thing. And so here, what we've teased out are Buford, Walker, and Clark. And so Clark being an additional math specialist because that was one of the areas we and so there you see that as for those schools for an additional reading specialist, math specialist, and in some cases different interventionist. And I know like at Walker, they are implementing the interventionist model this year, the interventionist model, but again, we're using some all-in funds, we're using some various sources. And so in order to make that a sustainable model, we would need to budget that for next.
Claire, Walker has a. They need addition. And so these two, reading and math interventions that she's asking for are on top of the folks that she has, because the need is to be placed in that house. And so we're making it happen this year. I think they're posted now, I think, and then to continue that, that's.
I really have a question.
I don't.
Oh, you got, okay. Okay. All right.
City's strategy, you know, it's getting quick, but,
Perfect, clearly that.
are these,
Is the second GRT position filled here? Walker's place.
Here.
Here. I mean, they have how many? Three. They're both at
They have three, right, Maria? Don't they have three?
how many here? 2 or 3? That's okay, let us know.
are these considered short, medium term, like, are we thinking these are gonna be needed for the next, like, into infinity? Or are we just like
No.
catching up to code?
So this is when we talk about differentiated staffing, as the data changes, the position moves.
Yeah, it could be in 2 years from now, we don't need these
Absolutely.
FTEs because we will have some.
That's correct.
I just think that's important messaging to also basically when we're talking city, state. There's some essential, obviously,
Yeah, short term.
yeah, a couple of years.
Yeah,
What do you think?
Walker has 3 there, all 3 of their names are Chris. 3 different people. All right, also want to make sure you see that we have included night school. I think we are already seeing the benefits of night school, and we are definitely hit the ground, meeting the students' needs and differentiating opportunities for them. And so we have included that that cost there, which also includes the same level of supports for them for next school year.
Can you remind me, are we continuing to use existing teachers and just extending?
So Mr. Trotter and I had a conversation about that yesterday, so, I mean, we still will utilize the same teachers as long as they have the interest. But most certainly it could be something that we could post out, and if for some reason someone doesn't want to return or whatever, we could post for and feel it's still gonna be an hourly, job. Yes.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
So this amount. Pay.
Oh, yeah, so that's not all salary, so, it's, KA, so the internship program, it allows us to still do the internship program. It still allows us to, pay for some of the resources. Some of the resources did not have a cost, but it allows us to still pay for some of those resources for the students, the mental wellness resources. So yes, no, that's not all salary.
So is there a reason that all they can handle, or is that all they can
We probably could be. What we found so far is that many of the students already had a job, but it doesn't have to be kept. We were hoping that there would be some money so that we didn't have to rely solely on us to do them. But yes, it is capped. And the other part that really sticks out too is that we've not had enough time, unfortunately, we've not had enough time to see how many students will access. Because we definitely are not at the 10, we're not at the close to the 10 yet with students using KO. So I think next year we'll bring a different, we'll have better data when we go to budget next week.
But they do, like, right, if the kids are older, they, like, if you go to get jobs, you know, or you can pay it. So they're 68, 70, and they're in high school, they may get paid for what's going on.
So we have, Dr. Johnson, or somebody scheduling a meeting, we already have an MOU, so we're gonna work through how we can capitalize on what we already have, but yes, that's gonna definitely be at the forefront, substance abuse counseling and what we already have. One thing, Ms. Powell talked about this earlier, but I want to make sure we draw people's attention that, we do want to make sure we budget so that we can work with the consultant to evaluate our student attendance zones. Not to be confused with attendance specialists. So we want to evaluate our attendance zones to see, as we continue to work through capacity issues in some of our schools, is there a way that we can better utilize our schools? And so I think that scope of work is a little bigger than the people at this table, so we would like to work with the consultant. And then that would definitely be some conversations and things that we would bring back before we based on their feedback. Are there any others from this list that I did not mention? I do wanna, I guess I should say that we are increasing, we would like to propose to increase our, tuition reimbursement rate from $500 for the whole year to $1,000. So we do have that included in the budget.
Are they maxing out that bed, like, are people taking advantage of that? Is there anything left in that pot?
Your middle school voice, Miss Lewis.
It's more than the right, and I'll just send that to you. I think that's
This is separate from the admin cohort.
This is separate.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Meyer.
Are we increasing the amount of spots at night, school and or Luke McGinnis with this budget somehow?
There's no physical way that we can increase the number of spots because the school only holds 30, so night school, the building only holds 30 daytime and it would only hold 30.
Right, so we're physically constrained, unfortunately, there's not a budget. Okay.
Right.
Second is, are we getting the social and emotional support positions? Does this cover all that? I mean, there's an unlimited need, but are we meeting the basic needs? We need that.
The SOQ is 12. And Z are 24. Beyond that, I believe that you could add 24 more and it, to some regards, it still may not be enough. I think what we owe you all, and what we owe all stakeholders is to say, this is the continuum of services and this is how students are accessing it so that you all have a better understanding. We have a better understanding of what students have access to.
Do the attendance specialists, we'll find a new name for them, it's additional CSA. I would consider that a little bit more of that.
Yeah. It definitely works into, our safety model when you talk about relationships, mental and physical well-being.
Then one last question to you colleagues.
Oh, you're fine.
When we move to the reconfiguration, we will see some savings on positions.
So at our principals meeting this week, I shared with them our conversation from our meetings that we've been having. So we are, as an ELT, will come back together the first Friday in March. And so we will be rolling out our reconfiguration plan in terms of work groups like we did for KTEC. And so included in that is ensuring that people understand what it means in this building in terms of what their options will be. Most certainly, there may be an opportunity we'll have a principal here. We will have assistant principals. I mean, there's gonna be a lot of duplication. So our job, we wanna make sure that everyone is employed. And so, hopefully attrition will absorb some of this and, people are adversely impacted, but that's why we're beginning that work now. And what I shared with, Ms. Thompson is that hopefully by May, we will be having the initial conversations with the Walker staff, just so that they know what it means for them. And so, yes, to answer your question, there could be some savings and hopefully it'll come through attrition, so no one loses their job, but we know that kids have to go to 5th grade and students have to go to 6th grade and
So like expanding the pre-K program, so for you expanding, except more kids, it could be opportunities there, right?
yes, I think the only thing is it would be an opportunity, in terms of people having jobs.
Yes.
Yes, the only difference is the scale of this school is much larger than what the scale of the preschools program. I think that would be the only thing to take into consideration. Like, will you need a secretary? Yes. So that means maybe a secretary or admin tech not lose their job, then all of those things are gonna be considered, and that's what we'll be rolling out, and most certainly that can be a part of a board presentation, because I want people to know that we're working on it, because what I've shared with the principal, January of 26. I mean, year after next, that's like our hard deadline, that's our hard stop, so. In December of 25, November, December 25, I would like for the Walker staff to know what their next steps are, because 2 years from now, we'll be having budget discussions, and so we'll need to know when we're sitting in this meeting, we need to know what the impact of the staffing will be. So we set a hard deadline of the people transferring and interviewing for elementary schools, things of that nature. We set that hard deadline for November and December November is the finish line, we hope, with November, December of 25. And we shared that at our principals meeting on yesterday.
We talked about some hall monitors over at the high school that we're repurposing some positions. Do we see them reflected on here, or how do we have, so far, we have 2 of our, we work crossing guards now, we classified in safety supports, but we can use them where most needed. They're crossing guards, and not everybody wants to be able to do this. So when I presented the opportunity to the crossing guards at our December breakfast meeting, where I'd like to show you a lot of appreciation before we head into this hard weather. I only had 2 that were interested in doing it, and honestly, not everyone, and we have all of them are great crossing guards, not all of them are the type of folks who want to come inside and do that type of work. So we had 2 that told me that day they were interested. They started last week. They were there today, and they work 10 to like 1:30 or whatever. It's kind of between their crossing guard shifts, and they're most often lunch time. Really need those extras. So we have started implementing that model. We did not request additional pay to support that at this time, or additional budget to support that at this time, because honestly, with vacancy savings and the hourly support budget that we already have, we think we can just keep running the experiment a little bit longer and see how many more folks actually will come in and take us up on it. Also, as we add additional staffing and honestly get all of our vacancies filled, we had a really unfortunate loss past week. And so, plus we had someone else who was a long-term sub position. And so before we, ask for more, I really want to see us just get fully staffed, keep doing what we're doing with these folks we have that we're willing to come in and help them, and then see where we are.
Thank you. How are you involved at all in the transit negotiations with drivers? So like we might see huge increases on that and not have any say in what they're doing in our time.
So as long as in the current configuration, what they do for their hours is entirely within the realm of transit. So in the future, if things were to change, even if any duties outside of transit would still get point of negotiation. With everything. So there's a lot we need to, see as far as what comes out of that negotiation, to determine what is the right fit going forward. And we've all heard me say many times that I've wanted for the past several years, felt passionate that, it could be better for the drivers to be with us, but based on, and I mean better for them, what I was thinking. But depending on what they prioritize in their negotiations, that may, we just have to see what's on the other side.
And then on that similar vein, what is the $9,000 for labor relations on our end for?
So we just, didn't really have a number to work off other than so far, so it costs $180. No, what, $1,800 a day. It costs $1,800 a day to contract a labor negotiator. So we just use that and we split that cost with CEA. We're hopeful that we don't have to do more than that, but I think that was the only, based on our two occurrences that we've had to use the labor negotiator so far, the third party mutual person.
Right. Didn't we talk about maybe piggybacking on the city?
Yeah, I think they, trying to keep up with their volume of.
And then give Williams or maybe Ms. Radlin would like to talk about
The K-Tech? Oh, the stipends? Oh, yeah, I mean, she can speak to that. Yeah.
We, even this stipend for. And it is very typical with increasing that stipend to incentivize people to be specialists, but also in some ways to de-incentivize leaving some nutrition within actually from not more. So cannot speak highly enough about the training that our students undertake, and the intensive.
So how's that stipend divvied out? Based on, is that like an incentive day or is that added on their requirement?
So they, it's specifically for those additional responsibilities, personal care needs. And so in our program now, life skills program in our program receive that stipend. And then our instructional assistants provide similar services to their kindergarten or first grade IA counterparts. They're not currently
monthly.
It's broken out amongst all their.
Now, how many people?
Increases to 529 a year.
Anything else on that sheet?
Can I go back, sorry, to the tuition reimbursement in the document because 500 a year to 500 per semester. Is it possible for it to be $1,000 per year? It could go towards one class.
I forgot what they call it. She said that. Yes, I forgot, you can remind me what I can't. Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, I was kind of shocked that it was like $500 and it was the whole year. And so I just think I said, we could at least do $500 a semester. I don't. I don't know.
Either or, like they've got extra $1,000 to do. I just like, can you get a class for $500? Like you're still gonna be coming out of pocket for a good shot. $1,000.
Right, that's what I thought about the $500, like, I mean, I don't even know if that's a community college class.
To that point, so then like every semester doesn't really help.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, I mean, the big thing is we need to up it.
I don't disagree.
But I don't think I saw anything where we're finding savings or reducing anything.
Oh, I mean, that was the whole process before this. I think that-
They're explicit somewhere else.
Well, I think that, I mean, if I could jump to the next slide, then I think that's the segue to this discussion. What you see, I wanted to make sure you remember that Ms. Hoover talked about our reduction in the LCI. So when we talk about state revenues and the impact, we know that our additional ask is this $12 billion. And so I think a lot of the work that we've done thus far, in terms of budget changes and positions, we've had like a lot of hard conversations in terms of like what's needs and what's not need. If you remember back on slide 19, and that was the slide that had remember when you talked about the it's the slide, Ms. Thacker, the one that had the real estate. And you remember that discussion was about the 2.9, right there. That was the discussion about the 2.7 to $4.2 million. If you look at what we're currently asking, we are way beyond. I mean, when you talk about an ask of $12 million, we're way beyond all of these asks. I think we historically, I know one of the very hard things that I had to do when we first got here was like looking at what things we could cut. I mean, that was really hard for me because I'd only been on the job for like 2 months. And it was like instructional assistants at the lower grades. And I think we've constantly been cutting, and I can imagine that when Mr. Saunders or when Ms. Hamill sees this number, that it's just like, what? And so I know that we're gonna have to have a lot of discussion about what stays, really prioritize. I mean, for me, I feel like everything here is a priority.
So it's a little bit behind that note is, and I'm not familiar with every initiative that we're doing or every special program or anything like that, but has there been something that we've found that's not working that we need to get rid of? Because it's not working. Because at the moment, it sounds like everything we're gonna, not trying to find a problem necessarily, but everything that we're doing at the moment, every special initiative, every little program that we're doing is basically working at us. We're gonna keep on funding it and we're gonna do more of it.
I think we would probably need to have a conversation about like what those special initiatives, because I think depending on the day of the week when you ask a principal, I mean, there's not enough in the building.
That's fine, but I think council will also look at this and be like, you're not cutting anything. You're only asking for more, which is fine, but politics sometimes.
Yeah, and I think I agree. I appreciate that the optics part, because I think the discussion that we've had is that we've always cut so much. But before they've seen like what we've had on the table, and the intent here is not to say, well, look at all the things we ask and we're gonna take some things off. I think we've always done that. We've always cut so much and then we're really only giving them our bare bones and with this compressed timeline, I mean, and you all know that like, we're literally giving this to you on the day of. That I think with the compressed timeline, we really are gonna have to work very thoughtfully about what the priority remains based on what the historical give has been.
So maybe if you could summarize at a different time, what were the things you cut over the last couple of years? To show them over the last couple of years, getting to your point, right?
It's them, but us too, I think.
Well, right, but yeah, I mean,
And then also. What you're proposing. But we know there are a lot of requests, you know, and if there are a lot of them, we could all probably support. I would love for us to come out to those. Use that in our conversation where we really wanted to focus to A, B, C, D. We did, we haven't. But I think that especially with this type of budget task, you know, I could do this is great. I mean, I don't know if we've ever the number. Now, the board need to be prepared to support this.
We're talking about a list of 37 things. I can duplicate the sheet and I can link it for you tomorrow. I mean, we're talking about 37 things roughly that were requested of staff. And when I say 37, some of those lines are like 4 additional on the line.
And some of the things are like, it's not necessarily a cut, but you know, after everything that happened in the fall, there was this huge push to get more resources into CHS. And so what do? We pulled from a vacancy and those types of things happen pretty regularly. So, you know, it's sort of, you know, second nature in a lot of ways. And then, but we can try to think harder about some of those things to put on the list to show that when problems come up, we're not just sitting back waiting for more, or what can we repurpose, what can we do? It's sort of like to see that being that the list is always longer than what we have the money to do. It feels like that doesn't mean you don't look for efficiency and just try to maximize your available resources. I also know we made a big push some years ago, and I think we did a good job on it, so I don't think we need to do as much now, but we were going through software subscriptions constantly and taking out things that weren't being heavily used, and even if a small handful of people had a big allegiance to this or that program, we called it down, and that was something we've done all the time, and we've done it fairly recently, so I'm not saying that was a big focus area this year, but like even with that, here's where there was elimination of things and consolidation of things in order to not just be one more thing.
But to your point, Hal, where you said we savings maybe from cheaper to support the yes. I mean, I think we need to have that written somewhere. And if that position now is re-emerging, and part of the task because we need to put that back into deferred.
Well, I know it's actually the ad, because as Dr. Curley pointed out, like school, like for the size, that's how many of these. Right, and so and that's for a school of a comparable size and also in the city, but we're not Petersburg, but point being, you know, this is actually like a last ad, but we had originally been talking about adding 2. And so we're like, okay, well, let's just go ahead and repurpose the position, try to staff up even faster and not only ask for that type. Because originally our budget request was for 2 as we were working internally.
I know it is budget that we're taking the council and asking for them to different funding. But what ways are we looking for additional funding in other ways, whether that's grant writing or connecting with the UVA?
I feel like we do that all the time. I mean, the state grants, we're utilizing a lot of the state grants. You know, we recently got a mental wellness grant. but that expires, unfortunately, we just got it, but that expires in June or June or July. June, that expires in June. I mean, we're always doing that. We're utilizing all in. So I mean, anytime we can get funds, I mean, what's typically hard about the grant funds, we will do these things, but then we have no way of sustaining. Like, and we start to see what we're seeing some of now. Like, it's really good, but then we need some local dollars to then sustain it because it goes away. And so, that's why in the perfect world, you don't want to put people in grants. You don't want to put people in grants because then you gotta figure out a way to pick them up.
So has Jim Ryan come to you and offered you $5 million a year and came in into taxes, something like that? No, he hasn't. Throw that out.
So, yeah, so, I mean, we recognize, I want to make sure that I say that, I mean, we recognize that we're going to have to go back in, there's going to be some retooling of this, but I mean, this right now is being presented strictly on needs, strictly on needs. But we're gonna work, I mean, I have really very good relationship with the city, can't say it enough. So I think they will let us know where they're trying to land in terms of support, and that will help us to gauge, like we talked about earlier, do we pull back on some of the site-based, do we pull back on some of these other things? And as a follow-up, what we can kind of do, because I think we do it just out of second nature. We solve a lot of our own problems, but we can let you know what some things we've cut or pull back on to save money. We can present that, we can make sure that can be presented to you in a written report of how. And then that takes us to our remaining dates.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we need to be in a really different place to have a conversation with them on February 7th.
Absolutely.
I'd be curious, like what you all feel you need. Where we want to be so that we can all be solid. Well, I'm a little bit different. I don't know why.
Yeah. And and Ms. Hooper and I have not spoken, so hopefully she will, I mean, she typically agrees. But, the number may look a little different when we come back, for budget. But keeping in mind, right, that we've talked about how do we not transfer the cost of healthcare? Which means that may need to push something up and then something comes down. Because we know from this meeting that's important. That's important to some, if not all. For everyone said that's important. So, for the number, well, we're gonna keep working it. We're gonna keep working it. Our goal, next Thursday, budget meeting. So typically what happens, staff will give me their presentations next Thursday, so by Friday, Leslie and I've gone through them so that you can get them posted. Our goal is hopefully next Tuesday-ish, that we can give this to you in advance. I want to make sure that you have it in advance, that you don't have this from the day of. So when we get to, the meeting for the February the 1st, because that's not next Thursday, but the following Thursday. So I want to make sure you have it in advance so that you can ask the questions that you want answers to before the budget meeting or after the budget meeting.
So what would help you decide beyond what you talked about tonight, what you and your team need or want to hear from us?
I just think that there's a lot of work that we have to, the hard part about this process is it's very compressed. I mean, on the city side, they're still doing this work for a very long time. They get to meet with staff and talk about, I mean, we we have a very condensed timeline on my side. So I think from, on our end, we just need more time. In addition to all the other things we do, we need time to just continue to flush this out and sit with school and sit with each other just to, if we can pull this out, then how does this look? I mean, that's really how we get to our bottom line. We just have to do a lot of working, massaging and figuring out how to make it work. Make it work with less.
Any other questions, board members? All righty then, this is a reminder, and I don't know if you have anybody who would like to speak public comment.
Very little, I think.
Okay,
Karen Weddle.
all right, Ms. Little, are you there? If you are, you're up, and you may take 3 minutes to share your thoughts or questions with us.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. And thanks to Pat and others who helped me get online. Appreciate you. Karen Little, I'm a parent to an 8th grader at Buford and a 10th grader at CHS, and had a few comments. Thanks for the presentation. It is, to Chris's earlier comment about only seeing the changes, it's really difficult to understand the full picture without seeing the full budget and having insight into the repurposing that you mentioned, and especially if you're a parent new to a school, not understanding how that school was budgeted the previous year, it's hard to really assess the spending. I wanted to offer up a few suggestions based on conversations I've heard recently in terms of requests that do align with the strategic plan priorities. The first thing is I've heard from teachers. I attended the CEA meeting last night that Shannon Gilligan hosted, and they had put forward some requests that I'd like to share here. First is that they're really hoping for a student activity director, a separate from the athletic director, to focus on school culture at CHS. This is something that was in place before and had been taken away over the years. So that's one. The second piece is that they'd like to see at least $2,000 in the CHS budget for community building to really focus on culture and relationship building with students. And then third, really seeing the focus on the exterior doors being updated with emergency exits and walkie-talkies in place for all staff. So I just wanted to amplify the request that they mentioned last night, and I know Shannon had hoped to be here, and I'm sure she'll follow up with school board members with more specifics on those. And then secondly, again, this is where it's hard to see the full budget and what's not reflected in only the changes, but based on conversations with parents at the CHS listening sessions, there definitely was an interest in seeing, how are we working to really retain teachers that we have, whether that's signing bonuses or some other incentives to really keep the CHS teachers. And then secondly, the principal salary, what kind of flexibility do we have to really make sure that we're getting a top-notch, high-quality principal candidate to join the school next year. So just wanted to offer those suggestions and really hope to dig into the full budget, not just the changes in the future. Thanks so much.
No one else? All right, and just a reminder that the meetings, and we saw those up there earlier, but we have February 1st. The board meeting, February 7th, the board work session council this year, February 15th, another joint work session. February 2nd, the when we meet. A lot of work.
I'd like to thank whoever turned off the heating.
Yeah.
Heating, you know, that was great.